James Rowe, 76, a Vietnam War veteran, lived alone in a small apartment at the end of Pine Street. Every morning, he polished his old military boots until they gleamed, hung the American flag outside his door, and walked to Memorial Park to pick up trash left by careless visitors. His routine never changed, not through summer heat or winter snow, not on holidays or during the days when his arthritis made each step painful. Many locals called him the crazy old man living in the past. Children made up stories about him. Teenagers mocked his routine from across the street. Fighting invisible enemies, sir, they would laugh. The war has been over for 50 years. Others made explosion sounds when he passed. The neighbors avoided eye contact when he walked by, not from hatred, from discomfort. His quiet dignity reminded them of something they preferred to forget. The only person who acknowledged him regularly was Mrs. Hernandez from the corner store, who had lost a grandson in Afghanistan. James never reacted to the mockery, just silently did what was right. He never complained, never explained why he still wore his dog tags under his civilian clothes. One Tuesday morning, he received a summons to be a witness in a criminal case where a young black man named Malik Jefferson was charged with assaulting a police officer during what the prosecution described as a routine intervention. No one knew why an elderly veteran was called to testify. On the court date, James woke before dawn. He carefully removed his dress uniform from its protective plastic. The jacket that had been through battles, stained with memories and his comrades' blood. The uniform hung looser than it once had, but James stood tall as he dressed. He pinned his medals with trembling fingers, not from fear, but from the neuropathy that had plagued him since the war. Last came the faded beret, positioned at the precise angle regulations required. When he entered the courthouse lobby, several young lawyers snickered, and a security guard whispered loudly, "This guy must be lost, probably thinks he is at a Veterans Day parade." An attorney walking past muttered, "Halloween came early this year." James heard everything. His weathered hands trembled slightly, but his eyes remained forward. Dignity was not just a word to him. It was the only thing some of his brothers had left when they died. He adjusted his beret, straightened his back despite the arthritic pain, and made his way toward courtroom 3. As he walked, people stared. Some took photos. One woman pulled her child closer, as if his military service was somehow contagious. James entered the courtroom, said nothing, looked at no one. In his pocket, a promise made decades ago that no one had remembered but him. Have you ever seen someone disrespected just for their appearance? Leave judgment. Some people were once mocked, but deserve society's standing ovation. If you believe those stories should be told, stay with us. In the courtroom, many still whispered, "What is his connection to this case?" James sat in the back row alone. His posture remained military straight despite the uncomfortable bench. The defendant, Malik Jefferson, 24, with close-cropped hair and tired eyes, sat at the defense table. He avoided looking at James, though his shoulders tensed when the old man entered. The prosecutor, a sharp-dressed woman with calculated gestures, declared confidently the defendant assaulted Officer Richard Brennan and caused public disorder during a legitimate police intervention. The evidence is clear. She clicked through slides showing Malik's prior speeding ticket and a school suspension from 9th grade. Irrelevant details meant to paint him as a troublemaker. The judge seemed bored, checking his watch occasionally. Another open and shut case in a system processing hundreds each month. Malik's public defender, overwhelmed with 47 active cases, had barely spoken to his client before the hearing. His defense seemed perfunctory at best. But then, after the prosecution rested, the defender straightened his tie and called an unexpected witness. The court calls Mr. James Rowe, former commander of Bravo Company 25th Infantry Division. The courtroom stirred. The judge looked up, visibly startled, as if hearing a name from long ago. When James stood, something extraordinary happened. Every uniformed guard in the courtroom simultaneously rose to attention. Backs straightened, chins lifted. One guard, Sergeant Martinez, according to his nameplate, had been James's trainee years earlier. His face showed immediate recognition and respect. A whisper rippled through the gallery. "Who is this man?" James walked to the witness stand with slow, deliberate steps. His shoes, polished to a mirror shine, clicked against the floor, the only sound in the suddenly silent room. After swearing in, James spoke. In a voice weathered by time but unwavering in conviction, I witnessed the entire incident on Tuesday, April 15th at approximately 2:43 p.m. Malik Jefferson did not assault anyone at all. He verbally intervened when Officer Brennan was using excessive force against a homeless veteran who was experiencing a seizure. The defense attorney presented a video from a coffee shop security camera across the street, at an angle the prosecution had ignored, confirming exactly what James had described. The mood in the courtroom shifted from dismissive doubt to astonishment. The prosecutor scrambled, "Your Honor, this witness was not on our list until yesterday. We question his reliability and mental acuity, given his advanced age." James did not flinch at the insult. His eyes remained steady. The judge leaned forward, removing his glasses. "Mr. Rowe," he asked, "why should the court consider your testimony reliable?" James reached into his breast pocket and withdrew a small leather-bound notebook. "Because I have documented every injustice I have witnessed for 53 years, Your Honor. Date, time, location. I was there when Officer Brennan struck the homeless man while his medical alert bracelet was clearly visible. I was there when Malik stepped between them, never raising a hand, only his voice." The courtroom grew utterly silent. Even the usual shuffle of papers ceased. "And why?" The judge continued, now fully engaged. "Would you come forward for this young man you apparently do not know?" James looked directly at Malik for the first time. Their eyes met across the room in a gaze filled with unspoken history that seemed to span generations. "I know him better than most, Your Honor." James continued with quiet authority. "I once commanded 134 men in Bravo Company. More than half never came home. When you have led men in combat, you develop an eye for the difference between someone who is protecting others and someone who is attacking." The courtroom was completely silent now. Even those who had laughed at his uniform earlier sat transfixed. The defense attorney asked, "Commander Rowe, why exactly did you come forward to testify today?" James slowly reached into his uniform pocket and carefully extracted a photograph protected in plastic. Young Malik at age 9 in a too large suit, solemnly holding the precisely folded American flag at the funeral of his father. "Because Michael Jefferson was the last man from my unit to die in Vietnam." A collective gasp swept through the courtroom. The pen of the prosecutor clattered to the floor. "Staff Sergeant Michael Jefferson, April 30th, 1975, the final day of the war." The voice of James remained steady, but a muscle in his jaw tightened. "We were evacuating civilians in Saigon. Michael pushed me into a drainage ditch seconds before a grenade landed exactly where I had been standing." For the first time, the expressionless face of Malik broke. His eyes widened in shock. His lips parted in disbelief. James continued, "As Michael lay dying with choppers overhead and the city falling around us, he asked only one thing of me: to keep an eye on his son born just 3 months earlier. A son he had never met. A son whose photos he carried through the jungle for 2 years. For 49 years, James had kept that promise. From a respectful distance, he watched Malik grow up. Through school events he attended silently, sitting in the back. He anonymously paid for the college application fees of Malik when his mother, working 2 jobs, could not afford them. When I learned that Malik was in trouble, I requested to testify," James said. "I called in favors from military contacts who still remember the name of the commander of Bravo Company." The judge removed his glasses entirely, clearly moved. "You have been watching over this young man his entire life." "Yes, Your Honor," James replied. "He does not know me. He has never met me. But I know him. I was there at his high school graduation, sitting in the last row. And I know without doubt, he has the moral courage of his father, intervening when someone weaker was being harmed, regardless of personal risk." The prosecutor asked, "If you have been watching over him as you claim, why have you never approached him directly before today?" James answered without hesitation, "Because a promise does not need recognition to be kept, it only needs to be honored." Several jurors wiped tears. The courtroom remained utterly silent. The chief of police, sitting in the back row, closed his eyes briefly, the realization of a terrible mistake washing over his face. The defense attorney then presented the unedited body cam footage that the prosecution had conveniently trimmed. The complete video clearly showed Malik stepping between Officer Brennan and an elderly homeless veteran wearing a faded military jacket. The exact words of Malik: "Sir, please stop. He is not resisting. He is having a seizure. Look at his medical bracelet." The video showed Officer Brennan shoving Malik backward, the moment that had been presented as assault in the edited version. Judge Harrison cleared his throat. In light of this evidence and testimony, I am dismissing all charges against Mr. Jefferson immediately. When James stepped down from the witness stand, something extraordinary happened. No one in the entire courtroom sat down. Not the spectators, not the court reporter, not even the judge. They remained standing, a silent tribute that spoke louder than applause. As Malik was formally released, he turned to James with tears streaming down his face. "You knew my father, you actually knew him." James nodded once, his military bearing finally softening. "He was the bravest man I ever met." "Why did you never tell me all these years?" asked Malik, his voice breaking. "Some debts can never be repaid," James replied quietly. "They can only be passed forward." James did not make any further statements. He simply bowed his head and walked toward the door, as if his momentous testimony had been just another duty fulfilled. Behind him, every person in the courtroom remained standing, including the judge who had removed his robe in respect. If you have ever promised someone something and still remember it, write promise. The next day, a small article appeared in the local newspaper. The man who made an entire courtroom stand. Few read it, but those who did cut it out and saved it. James returned to his modest apartment, continuing his daily ritual. Polishing his boots, raising the flag, picking up trash in the park. Nothing in his routine changed. 3 days later, a tentative knock came at his door. Malik stood there holding a box of donuts and coffee. "I did not know what else to bring," he said awkwardly. "May I come in?" They sat in the living room of James, surrounded by photos of young men in uniform, frozen in time, forever young. On the center shelf stood a photo of Michael Jefferson, the father of Malik, smiling broadly beside James in jungle fatigue. "He looks just like me," Malik whispered, touching the glass gently. "He saved my life," James said simply. "Now I have returned the favor." Malik began visiting every Sunday afternoon. He started calling James Father James, a title that made the eyes of the old soldier shine with uncharacteristic emotion. The neighborhood teenagers who once mocked the crazy old veteran grew quiet when they saw Malik, now enrolled in law school, walking alongside James, listening attentively to every word. The local police chief personally apologized to both men. Officer Brennan was suspended, then reassigned to community service at the Veteran Center. 6 months later, people noticed James was not raising his flag at 6 o'clock in the morning. Concerned neighbors found him peacefully passed in his sleep, a photo of his old unit clutched in his hand. At the apartment door, they discovered a small wooden box with a note. "I never needed anyone to know who I was. I only hoped everyone would live so they would not feel ashamed when standing before a silent man." Inside the box was his Purple Heart medal and a handwritten note to Malik Jefferson, who stood up just as your father once did. Malik wore the medal at the funeral of James, attended by hundreds of veterans who stood at attention for a full hour by his flag-draped coffin. Today at the courthouse where justice was served, a simple bronze sign reads, "Judge not by appearances, but by the amount of honor within." And each Veterans Day, residents notice a successful civil rights lawyer sitting beside an immaculate grave, polishing a Purple Heart medal and telling his children about 2 men, a father he never knew, and the silent guardian who connected them across time. Do not judge people by the clothes they wear, but by how an entire room responds when they walk in. James Rowe did not seek fame. He simply kept an old promise, and that single act of faithfulness saved a young man from being buried under prejudice. In a world full of noise, there are people like James who walk quietly but make society stand in honor. True honor is not about medals or uniforms. It is about the promises we keep when no one is watching. The most powerful witnesses in life's courtroom are often those who speak the least but observe the most. If you have ever known someone like James, do not let them disappear from memory, because sometimes just one observer can save an entire life. And the most profound courage is not found in grand gestures, but in showing up day after day, keeping faith with those who are no longer here to speak for themselves. In the end, our lives are judged not by what we claim to be, but by the promises we keep, even when they are inconvenient or forgotten by everyone else. "Is he really wearing that to court?" Someone laughed from the benches. The old uniform with worn shoulders, the faded beret. The veteran walked silently past the disrespectful stares. But when he opened the courtroom door, everyone rose to their feet. Not because of protocol, But because of a shocking truth about to be revealed, do not forget to subscribe to Iron Echo Stories and tell us your favorite part in the comments.